to Heart Change You Live. I'm Ashley. Here with me today, as usual, are Heather, David, and we have Mr. Matthew in the control room punching all the buttons. So we have something very special today. But as always, if you have comments or questions or just want to jump in and join the conversation, please enter into the chat and let us know what you're thinking. So, Matthew will let us know if you have a comment and bring it in. So, okay, Heather, we have something very special today.
We do. This is our first time doing a live reaction video. We're going to do a sneak peek of a new piece of our Omega Project curriculum, but it's also a testimonial video from people who were in the program for various periods of time, many of them still, who are sharing their experience with what we call an ear to hear, which is just learning to receive what other people are seeing about us, what other people think of us, as well as correction and guidance from others. It's
like
a key
in a healthy
component
way
to growing.
Receiving that.
Yeah. So just, what do we face as we open ourselves to receive criticism and as well as praise, and to really learn to connect with one another.
If you really want to mess with my world, you actually start praising me.
I have a similar issue.
It's kind of like I had a youth pastor at one point who he loved to torment me by he would get up on stage on Sunday morning, just kind of go on, and I was like, give me some rotten apples to be throwing at him or whatever. It was like, no, thank you.
It is kind of fun to watch you cases squirm, because I know Derek, he's like that too. I mean, he doesn't even like to celebrate his birthday. Like, if we just all completely ignore him on his birthday, that's like the best gift ever. Like, no cake, no singing, no presents, just like life is normal. So, which I find is very strange. So,
well,
I'd be okay with a birthday week,
that my wife actually, I found out early on while we were dating, her birthday's right up against Valentine's Day, and so she wanted a week. I mean, it's like, this is not fair. I'm missing one of the major events, so you better make a big deal of this for an extended period or I get cheated.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us adapt in different ways. My birthday is right by 4th of July, so I never made a big deal out of it because, I have an issue with being a burden and wanting too much attention for myself. Just this, kind of cower and want to make myself small. So I never want to celebrate my birthday. Let's just wait for the 4th of July to do it, and I'll blow out a candle if you want me to, but don't even get me a gift.
Well, today we are talking about ear to hear, and to whom, be careful how you hear, as the scripture says. Be careful how you hear, because according to how you hear, that's going to determine what's going to be given to you. This piece of hearing is incredibly important.
I just heard you like you almost like physically changed into pastor mode right there.
You heard me change my
and
voice.
Switch, and it was pastor mode.
I wondered. There was this smirk over there, and I'm kind of like, what just happened?
I just think it's kind of cool that he's the one that's bringing us back on track.
He's the one that's usually having the rabbit trails.
Hey, last week, I will have you know that you guys went for over 10 minutes before I even got a chance to wave. So, I mean, I don't want to hear this rabbit trails being pointed at me here. I mean,
we learned it by watching you.
Yeah. Oh, fearless leader.
All right. I feel the love just while I absorb it.
Yeah. Okay, so I interrupted you a little bit. So what is there anything else you wanted to say before we get to the video?
How about if we actually start showing some clips and we will interact with the video?
Matthew, do you have anything to say before we show clips? You did a lot of work on this.
Yeah, let's just hope it works. All right.
Proverbs 14:12 says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end of that way is death." And then Proverbs 16:2 says, "All of the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit." This brings out another aspect that's so incredibly important in this area. How often do we listen to the mantra of, well, you don't know me. You don't know my heart. I'm the only one that knows me. I'm the only one that knows what's going on inside of me, so you can't judge me. You can't speak to me. You can't know me. Well, actually, what the scripture says is almost the opposite. It tends to work that other people see you more accurately than you see yourself. In fact, if you just keep going after those instincts, at some point you're going to end up at a place of death. Invariably, when we're working with groups, I'm always amused as I look around the circle and the one person will be talking away, and sometimes I'm confronting that person with what I feel like is a scriptural point of view, and that person's shaking their head, no, you don't know me. You don't understand what's going on. And the same time that I'm saying that, I've got 10 other heads going, yes, because they can see that person. There's only one person in the group that doesn't see that person. That's the person himself. This is such an incredible truth for us to get a hold of. The person you're probably the most blind to in the entire group is yourself. When we get a hold of this truth, that's incredibly powerful in terms of us being able to receive instruction. As long as I believe I'm the only one that knows me, why would I listen to anyone else? But when I start to understand that God knows a word before it's even on my tongue, He knows a thought before it's even in my brain, and the people around me watching and observing, well, they know a few things too, then I'm much more open to correction. Again, examples from people's lives will help bring this home. Well, first of all, I don't think I like that because I had to watch me for a little bit. But either of you have something? We're going to go into testimonies, and that's a key part of what this is. But just any comments so far in terms of the concepts?
I was just thinking it's like a hamster being in one of those little hamster tunnels. Like, standing from the outside, you can see the whole thing, and you can say, no, you need to go that way if you're trying to get to your little wheel, I don't know, it's just easier to see from the outside somebody else than when you're in your own mess, in your own tunnel. It's like having a horse with blinders on, like you just can't see. And I've been in those positions before where I can't see, and I don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. The thing that is said, and I have it said to me over and over again in the program, well, you don't know me. You don't know my heart. And as a culture, last week, good segue. Last week we talked about romance. And so, well, I'm attracted to this person. I feel it. I know it. All of that. We really do genuinely believe that there's this thing inside of us that I'm the only one that knows this thing and nobody else knows it. And that's an incredible starting point. As long as I believe that, I'm not going to be hearing anything anyone around me is saying.
Well, that's one of the reasons I like this this video, and getting to make this video was pretty awesome, because it's not just you saying a true thing. This is people from all walks of life that have been here various amounts of times, all saying about the same thing. And we're going to hear that here very shortly, and that's why the title of this chapter is Correction is Hard, because it is a very difficult thing, but it is really cool when you start seeing it from multiple people and it's not just the pastor making something up that sounds good. It's actually legit. So I just thought that was pretty cool about this whole process.
You're saying I would make things up that sound good? Is that
you could.
Is that what I heard you say in there?
No.
I heard it.
Are you hearing through your own filter?
Well, I just wondered if I need to defend myself or not.
I'm just thinking about why is correction hard? And for so many of us, myself included, I came from a family that didn't know how to give loving correction. So, and they came from a family that also didn't know how to give loving correction. So it's been passed on. And so for me to receive correction, to be open to receiving that, I've had to really get vulnerable and really be willing to receive it without it just gutting me, because it's almost like I'm just waiting for you to smash, every little dream and hope. And that's why it's hard for me. And I think that's true for other people as well. Even when they're saying, you don't know me and you can't say that to me, you don't know where I come from. Well, I know that you're wounded, because we all are. We live in a fallen, broken world, and you're a fallen, broken human, and so am I. And if I can come to you from a place of compassion, and if I can receive from you, from your compassion, that this correction is truly coming from love and a place where you're not going to send me to my room without dinner, and you're not going to beat me. You're not going to tell everybody what a horrible person I am. You're coming to me with a genuine care. And that's very new. None of us are really used to that. At least I sure wasn't.
It's interesting. You're going to undercut my point. I had a point I was going to make, and as you talked, and there's healthy correction. And healthy correction actually lives inside the one another lifestyle. It cares about you. It does bring things in a positive way. My one-liner that I was going to give, that I don't use this one very often, but it's, your pain will be proportional to your pride. So that one's kind of one of those gut checks. Now, on the one hand, I have to agree with you. There's times when people are just dumping on you, and they're bringing it in a sick way. And so the pain is multiplied because the person and the way they're bringing it is not good. But there's also another piece that it doesn't matter. That if a person is a pride person, you can tiptoe, you can whisper, you can stand at a distance and just kind of be really sweet and lovable and layer all kinds of things into it, and there's still going to be a time bomb go off that's going to create an explosion. When your pride level gets back under control, the pain level of confrontation, correction becomes much lower.
Well, and the flip side of pride being self-loathing, which is just a pride in reverse. And so for me, it's the same. You know, it is definitely a pride issue.
Okay, so I have a question. So I've noticed in my daughter that she, even like the last 2-3 weeks, she really has started struggling receiving correction from strangers. I mean, I'm talking about nothing happened, like horrible. Like, she was standing on a Walmart rack and she wasn't supposed to be. And I told her to get down, and a motherly type employee came by and said, "Honey, don't stand on the racks. Can you please not do that?" She just crumbled, and she hid her face into me, and I was kind of surprised by her reaction, but it was disproportionate to normal. So how does a stranger like that compare to, a mother correcting you, or someone you have a relationship with? I don't know. I was intrigued with her reaction, and it kind of worried me a little bit.
Different people respond different ways, obviously. Some people that you can only be hurt by what you care about. So some people are very sensitive to the people out there and to reputation. And so the people out there saying something would be crushing. But the people who already know you and know you well, you're not going to impact the reputation at all. So that one's not such a big deal. And the response that you're talking about is a shame response, which tells me that, oh yeah, I'm concerned about, there is a pride center in that. I'm concerned about reputation, how people think about me, and oh no, I've just been exposed, and this is shameful and awful.
Could it be too that she feels safe with you?
Exactly.
I wondered that.
That's part of it.
She ran to me afterwards.
Yeah.
So
I was going a little different. She knew she wasn't going to have any consequences when you said get off the rack, and when somebody else did, she got concerned. Obviously, 99% in jest.
That too. Well, let's roll. Let's hear some testimonies. If I could do a voiceover, aren't the graphics
I
cool?
think when you're in a state of depression, especially when you're not really doing anything but isolating, you're just stuck with your own thoughts, and it's all about, what do I need to do? What have I done wrong? Where did I go wrong? and you're beating yourself up constantly, and any extra criticism from the outside just feels like a dagger in the heart, really, and it just makes it that much harder, you know. Anytime someone brings something constructive, there's always that voice that is your own in there that is saying roughly the same thing, but in a very condemning tone. And I always listen to that way more. In my depression, I always listen to that way more than I listen to the people that are trying to help me get through it.
I think that when the tsunami hit, when I actually started to understand that I had feelings too, and that they mattered.
I think I know better than other people. I've lived a long life, and I've survived because I'm strong, and I think I know better.
Because this conflicts so much with my upbringing. My parents taught me to be humble, not to brag about yourself, not, you know, to not talk about yourself. So I was really surprised that one of my thing to work on is pride. And it manifests itself in so many different areas of my thought process and my walk with God. And it's a strong one. And so that was, you know, because I didn't grow up, you know, thinking about me all the time and me. But it's amazing how my spirit is me. And so I'm working on pride.
Well, I thought I was already doing what I was supposed to do, because I always did what I was supposed to do. So when I was held accountable for my time and my relationships and my money, since I already, I'm in my 50s, and so I've been doing this on my own for a while. I thought I already was doing what I was supposed to do because I thought I was pleasing people, so it didn't go over well. And then when Pastor told me I was rebellious, I was like, no, I'm not rebellious. I've never been rebellious my entire life. So I was surprised at myself that I didn't, because I thought I had always been the good student, the good daughter, the good girl to always do what I was supposed to do. And all of a sudden, I was hostile. All of a sudden, people didn't want to be around me. All of a sudden, people told me I was hostile and I was the mean girl. I've never been the mean girl, ever. And it didn't make me happy at all. It didn't empower me at all. Maybe for a little bit it might have, but it did not make.
So that cut off just a little bit early, and I apologize for that. It'll, in the actual video that's coming out after this is over, it goes on for another second before the next transition. So I apologize for that. What do you think?
There's so much good stuff in there. I'm over here
taking notes
because just from the very first testimony with Steve, talking about how difficult it was for him to receive correction or feedback when he's already in a state of shutdown and depression, and I think a lot of us, whether we've struggled with depression ourselves or just been around someone who has, we all are familiar with that struggle of what do I say to not drive them further down into that pit, to be able to lift them out. But having been someone who has suffered with depression, I know that when you're in it, exactly what he was talking about, it does feel like I'm just trying to stay right here. The word I thought of was like turtling, I'm in my little safe place so I don't make the rest of the world a horrible place because I already think I'm a terrible person that's just going to ruin everything. And then you're going to come along and tell me that I got to get up because this is affecting you too. What do I do? So, man, I really related to what he was sharing. That's huge.
Well, I have a one-liner for everything.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do. You can't talk your way out of depression. You have to walk your way out of depression. So it's interesting, as you said, anything, as he said, anything anyone else brings, it just adds to. And it's kind of like, you can't tell me anything. I'm already telling myself that. I'm already beating myself up in those zones. And many times with depression, that especially your mercy people or whoever are sucked into that, and it's like, oh, I feel so sorry for you.
We play into the pity party.
Yeah, you play into that, which a lot of times all that does is just continue to stir up the, oh wow, I really am miserable, I really am broken, I am lost, and all of that it just gets sicker and deeper. And what I have actually found that is effective, you can't talk your way out, you have to walk your way out, is, okay, let's get some agreed on minimums.
Baby steps.
Baby steps of, you know what, you're in depression, you need to sleep a lot. So we're going to agree on the fact that you're going to sleep a lot. But we're not going to sleep 24/7, so let's figure something out for the morning time, something for the afternoon time, and maybe afternoon is just sleep, okay? But it's by choice, and something for the evening time, so that I've got something that I'm moving in one of those sections of the day, two of those sections of the day. You can't talk your way out, you walk your way out. So now listening takes on a whole different feel here. Listening is me being able to take you by the hand and saying, okay, now we're going to take this step right now. I don't want, the depressionary person would say there's no hope, there's no I can't. You've got all that. And so listening, at that point, we're not talking, listening. We're not talking me hearing, processing. We're talking about listening, me hearing, doing. You can't talk your way out. You walk.
That doesn't make sense to me.
There's
the difference?
There's a listening where I talk to you and you process and you nod your head and you politely tell me that you've heard me and you've understood me. That's one form of listening.
Yeah.
Another form of listening is you with your kids. I told you to pick up your toys. You're not listening to me. It's not that they didn't hear. It's not even that they didn't process. They heard, they processed, they ignored. Mm-hmm. So there's listening of, oh, I have to respond now. I need to pick up toys now.
I have to make a choice here.
I'll bet you understand that.
I do.
Part of listening. Yes.
That looks like you were in my house this morning.
So with depression, listening at that point takes on a completely different look in order for it to be healthy. Mm-hmm.
I thought that Levi's response was interesting because he doesn't really get into much of his life or the things that he's had to deal with. And so I want to call it the tough guy response. That I have come through wars. He's not in the army, but like he's had battles.
Yeah.
And he's had his scars. So you're going to tell me how to change my life and what to do differently? Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And that's another version of I'm the expert. I've lived inside of me. I've experienced anything that you'll ever, actually more than you could ever experience. I know more than you could ever know. So you can't talk to me. That's the language of every one of these. You can't talk to me. You don't have anything to say to me. You don't know what's going on inside of me. And that's just about anybody that you sit down and try to work with. That's going to be a very strong instinctive response.
Yeah, what's coming to me is what is that song? Old Town Road, can't nobody tell me nothing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But that does become kind of the mantra. You hadn't lived my life, you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
And even the self-pity side, that's the same. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know that I'm giving it my best to even just get up and go to the bathroom right now. It's still that you don't understand. You don't see me, So And ironically, it's that we don't see ourselves. And we heard that with Christy being like, I totally had no clue that I was rebellious. In her mind,
Or the mean girl, yeah.
Right, or yeah. But, I was also thinking, we don't really know, and it's something that is beautiful about living here together. We don't really know somebody until you live with somebody, and we start to see these things if we're open to it and open to hear. I know I certainly do when I start to see these things reflected by the reactions of other people that I never could have seen in myself until we were up close and personal and thrown together in a communal living situation. Same thing when you get married, though. I have a friend named Spencer, who said that he sent his representative to date his wife. He's like, she didn't really meet me until we got married, and then I showed up. So there's some truth to that too. Like when you start living with somebody, you start to see it all. And hopefully you have people who love you enough to do what we're talking about, which is tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm. With Christy, I had to come back to another one-liner. If it don't show up, you won't grow up. And you were talking about that with Spencer. I mean, I presented to my wife-to-be, I lived this particular life. You get into those close quarters and it shows up. Yeah. Now, once it shows up, what typically people do is it's your fault. If you hadn't responded that way, if you hadn't been like that, I wouldn't have responded this way. I'm really not like that. I've been in all of these other situations and I've been the people pleaser, and so I'm really not that person. And I've kind of come back to Matthew 12, where out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. So if it comes out of you, you can blame the other person as a trigger if you want. And you can say, well, if you hadn't triggered me, and I come back and say, well, if it wasn't in there. Right. And so once these things start showing up, all of a sudden I have a decision. Am I going to point fingers, or am I going to actually see what's going on in a way that I begin to take ownership of it? And as I take ownership of it, then I start making the needed changes. And that's heart change. When we actually see that, own it, try to make the heart change, and guess what will happen at that point? You'll fail miserably. It might even escalate. You might even look worse and worse for a while you're in that trauma trial zone of it showing up. But somewhere in there, if it's being done the right way, you're actually going to listen. You're actually going to draw strength from God. You're going to draw strength from those who are around you. And lo and behold, you find that heart change begins to happen. And what I couldn't do before this incident showed up, or this person spoke to me and corrected me, if you walk it out the right way, you find that now there's a humility. I draw strength. I'm now capable of doing something that I couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matthew, what do we got next? I'm excited to get to the next one.
Well, we actually just had a YouTube question come through from Gary. And it says, I want to say that you are talking about me. I know all the survival skills I know because I've had to use them my whole life. I know how to handle any situation, except I never got a good outcome. And so I think we definitely covered that when we were talking about Levi's. And I know if you watch the full video, there's quite a bit more in there from Levi, and he is extremely good with the way that he puts things so that we can understand. So I'm glad that related with Gary there. But let's go ahead and we'll get the next chapter started up.
We all have internal instincts that have been programmed anywhere from life events, cultural things, to we have an inner spiritual gift that is a passion piece, that's a desire piece. And all of these things kind of come together to form a sense within us of this is right and this is wrong and this feels right to me. And a lot of times you hear the phrase, well, just follow your heart, follow your gut, follow your instincts. And there's times when you really are in touch with God and He's moving on your spirit in a way that those instincts are actually good. And if that's what you're following, that's a good thing. But actually, most of the time, we're not following that. There's all of this shaping that's gone on through all of our lives. So we respond to a concept more that I call normal. We tend to feel comfortable with that shaping that has happened. And so when it fits our shaping, it feels right. And when it doesn't fit our shaping, it feels wrong. You will be inclined to do this exact thing. If you're going to learn to receive correction, you've got to get outside of normal and start listening to the people around you, certainly listening to the Word of God, starting to take some steps in that. We want to hear from people who normal has messed with their life and they had to learn a different lesson. I'm full of one-liners today. Obedience must come before understanding. And that's because of this normal piece. We are so completely shaped by our past life, our past world. We think inside of that. We think inside of normal. We think inside of a worldview. So we think that we are able to step over to the side and to be objective. I love that word. You know, well, I'm being objective. Yeah, sure you are. You're objective on everything except you and about you. But when it comes to you, you're not able to be objective. And the thing that shapes us the most is this concept of normal. I know you, that was a new concept, I believe, for you when you came around. Any reactions to normal, that how it...
Well, I mean, you know, my experience is I do not let go of something until it does not work anymore. I still have an iPhone 7. It's working just fine. A year ago, they told me they were going to quit supporting it. It's still working, so I'm not going to trade it in because it's still doing what I need it to do. And that's the way I operate. I don't get rid of something until it doesn't work for me anymore. So even though I can know that other people might do things in a better way, I'm definitely a creature of habit. I'm definitely somebody who is stuck in, the older I get too, the more it seems to be the case that I'm kind of stuck in my way of doing things and not nearly as flexible as I could be or I would like to be. So when I arrived at the program, I had come to a place where I didn't know what to do. I didn't. I'd done what I was supposed to do. I went to detox. I went to a halfway house afterward, and I was just really aware I'm going to make a huge mess of my life if I just go get a job and get an apartment. And why is that? Well, because I've done it so many times. And God had shown me and illustrated to me, your ways don't work, you know? So when my iPhone quits working, I'm like, hey, what kind of phone do you use? Where do you get that thing? How expensive is it? You know, can you show me how to do this? And so that's what made me willing to turn in my iPhone for a newer model, just something else that might work a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about church. So when I was raised, we went to a church where we sang out of hymnals. Nobody raised their hand unless they had a question or it was an emergency.
And that definitely was not on a Sunday morning.
And it was never on a Sunday morning. Yeah. And I mean, and looking back, it was fine. It was fine. But then fast forward to when I get married and we have to pick a church and we decide to go to a Pentecostal church. And
you were in for a rude awakening from a Baptist to a Pentecostal church. Okay.
Well, and I mean, there have been steps along the way, and I've definitely grown since that girl I was back then. Yeah. But when you're talking about your normal as compared to this other thing out there, I remember the first time I felt like God wanted me to like talk to somebody and tell them something. I was like, no, that's not what we do. I don't know if you remember going to church, but Nope. And I was wrong. I was the one that was wrong, you know? Because, I mean, it was God asking me, not me. So.
Well, that shaping is incredibly powerful, and that really is one of the hardest things we deal with in addiction. It doesn't matter who I'm working with, that sense of conscience that is, hey, I'm right, this is right. When you start guarding something that you believe is right when it's actually harmful, unhealthy, wrong, that's the definition of a stronghold. I mean, that's something that is no longer simple. I don't care how bad your issue is. If you recognize that it's bad, you're in agreement with me. It's just a matter of helping you get from point A to point B. And it's not that tough. But when I'm working with you and you're like hanging on to something that you're absolutely right, when you are in an unhealthy place, that becomes very difficult. And to me, that's one of the best definitions of a stronghold in our lives that it's going to be hard to deal with. I think we are ready to roll. Let's see some more.
Anything to get me moving, get me out of my own head, and get me pointed in a positive direction. And that it kind of just feeds on itself from there. That was the biggest thing, just getting a life, getting stuff going. Maybe at first it was going through the motions, and it feels forced and it feels awkward, but I think the more I did it, the less awkward it felt, the less forced it felt, and things just started changing for me.
First of all, it made me feel like there was something terribly wrong with me. But then, once I got past my fit throwing, once I got past my hostility, and I started listening to Pastor and listening to Charlotte and other people around me that were trying to explain to me that correction was not to belittle me, that correction was many things. It was for my safety. It was to show me how important I really am. When people are correcting you, it's not because they don't love you. It's the exact opposite. It's because they do love you. And so when I began to realize that, because when I was corrected as a child, it wasn't done in a very loving manner. It wasn't done with love really at all. And I love my parents very much, but it just wasn't. And it is here. And it's done with explanation here. And so once I began to realize that, I began to calm down. And it began easier, and I began to understand why I'm being corrected.
There were many times when I didn't want to come off as being the naughty girl or the sinful person, because my thoughts were different. And those thoughts maybe weren't necessarily set in stone, but they were questions. I've always questioned. But what was really negative about that is that I got to the point where, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything and everything. And that was, I had to really work on trying to pinpoint down with Jesus and with religion. I have gone full circle with that. When I've learned about and studied the truth behind the Bible and Jesus's life, and then I made my own decision.
What's interesting as you listen, it's to me, it's some of the very things that you brought up right at the very beginning, you're now seeing on the video. I'd like to make a point in terms of this thing. It's quite a bit longer, obviously, but this would actually make a great curriculum piece for a Sunday school class, for a small group, etc., where if you take this and you actually sit down and you begin to talk through some of these, I'm going to call them truisms. We have things that we believe. We believe about ourselves. We believe about others. And if we start responding in different ways, in the end, it starts making us healthier people. That really goes along with one of my key ideas. I wrote a discipleship series. Almost all discipleship series that I know are based on learn this doctrine. Okay, now learn this second doctrine. Okay, now learn this third doctrine. I'm of the belief that if you teach people to read the Word, and they're actually reading the Word, and they're learning how to read and how to study, in the end, they will know much more about the Word. And in the end, they will probably have better doctrines overall than if I take them through a set of, okay, I'm going to give you 6 weeks of doctrine, and now you're called a disciple. What I believe it's behavioral changes that are key. When I start reading the Word, I attend church, I begin to walk through some basic steps, and one of the most powerful steps is this piece. My attitude towards correction. The way I look at correction is huge. And if I develop healthy and positive attitudes towards correction, back to the ear to hear, be careful how you hear, because to him who hears, to him who receives, more will be given. But to him who does not hear, even what he has will be taken away. I mean, that's a powerful verse when you think about that. Hearing, how we hear, the way we respond, just so critical. And of course, this video, we just took a few snippets out of it. But this video explores some of the different things, the excuses that we use to, how dare you talk to me like that? How dare you speak that? Who do you think you are? All of the kinds of things that shut us down from hearing in a way that we can actually grow and get better.
I was thinking about my own responses to correction. And there's somewhere, it's like a phase thing for me. Like the first initial thing is just like building a wall and like almost preparing to be hit. Not that I ever am hit, it's just, like a mental blow, But then after I get alone and kind of let it roll off my back a little bit, I realize, oh, they were probably right, And
I wonder, I don't know. So I'm just thinking about different things that are built into life that help prepare us for receiving correction. Like there are some people who seem to be much more resilient and able to handle it more than me, especially internally. I don't always show it on the outside, as we know, but what it does inside. And a couple of the things is, number one, I'd never played sports. And one time Pastor had corrected me on something and kind of called me out, and I got really hurt. And I was like, why did he do that? And then I realized that you were coming at it like a coach. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I played soccer for a second, and I was on the swim team for a minute, and I never stuck it out. I was never in one place long enough to do that, honestly, because I was a ward of the state and being jumped all over the place. But I never got in the habit of someone who cares about me receiving that kind of correction, coaching. So it was something that was completely new to me. I hadn't had it. Some people too have been musicians, and they've had a music teacher who has corrected the way that they play or stand or hold their hands. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any of that. My dad tried for a brief period of time to teach me how to play the guitar, and he got so frustrated with me that he was like, "We can't do this together." He just can't. So I never had a healthy modeling of how to receive correction. So I just always took it as if you were gutting me, and that it was very personal and not, I wasn't ready for it, for sure.
When you talk about that, I remember an 8th grade coach who said that if I'm yelling at you, don't worry about it. If I'm yelling at you, I believe that I can help make you better. You need to worry about it if I'm not yelling at you, if I'm not correcting you, if you want to get into a different language, because at that point, that means I've given up hope. And I don't believe that there's anything I can do. I don't believe there's anything I can say that's going to make a difference in your life. That was huge to me. I mean, that comment was burned into me in a way that, well, I'm still quoting it. Mm-hmm. I still remember it. It really got deep into my psyche. And so that quote right there, that lays a foundation for what you're talking about of, do you want to grow? Do you want to get better? And then if you combine that with Proverbs chapter 1, and other segments of the video go into this, God says, I cried out in the streets, and you would not have any of my, and he uses the strongest word possible, you would not have any of my rebuke. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people say, well, if you had said it to me nicely, I might have listened to you. Well, that's not what Proverbs 1 says. Proverbs 1 says, you refused my rebuke, I will laugh at your calamity. Now, I'm not saying that God is going to mock you and have fun over you. I don't believe that's what the passage means. The passage simply is highlighting the law of sowing and reaping. Mm-hmm. And there is a justice side of God that if you sow this, you are going to reap this. And so when you're at your point, when you're kind of getting slapped up the side of the head and you're wanting something better, you're at a point where it's like, I'm sorry, my hands are tied. I can't do anything now. You should have thought about that before. And it's interesting to me in that chapter how closely wisdom is tied to rebuke. Didn't say gentle reproof. It didn't say gentle, just come alongside and be nice to you. And in the sports world, we recognize that. Sports world, I mean, they're kind of pulling back a little bit now, but I mean, you can yell, you can scream. In the old days, not very far back, you know, if you're a football coach, you're going to hit players, you're going to do whatever. And again, I'm not condoning that level. But in the sports world, it was like, I want to be good. I want to win. Oh, you're screaming at me. Okay. I'm going to take it inside of the discussion that we're having here of, I want to get better.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about that it's different today. And I was thinking about that too as we were watching this, about how different this is from where the culture is now, where it seems to be heading, which is like, you know, follow your own heart. But even to the extremes where there is no right and wrong. It's just what feels right to you right now. And we're even allowing children to make decisions that will affect them for the rest of their lives based on how they're currently feeling. Mm-hmm. And the lines have been so blurred. And I wonder if that didn't start with participation trophies, to be honest, and that kind of thing where I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to squash the little bright light that you are, you know, and if that hasn't turned into just whatever goes.
Well, you're familiar with the step-by-step series, and in there I talk about safe being important. I believe the way we discipline actually had to change. As we saw more and more broken homes, as we saw more and more tragedy, etc., young people have never been through safe. They've never been through belonging. They've never been through covered. And again, that's an incredible video series.
Adults have never been through that.
For people to do that. So now if I've got parents who have never been through that, they don't have the ability to instill confidence in life in the child. I don't care if you've never had that instilled in you, and you have an eighth grade coach who says, if I'm yelling at you, you're not able to comprehend that. You're not able to process that. So the nation has needed to move from harsher correction, reproof, to a place of just kind of gentle, just kind of, everybody gets a participation trophy, because they didn't have the stuff on the inside. They didn't have the ability to handle it. So yes, there is. In fact, in the program, what do? We don't jump in with correction right away. We do everything we can to build safe. We do everything we can to build belonging. A lot of times people are almost angry at me. It's like, well, you're going awful soft on this person right here. Well, yeah, we don't have the relationship. We don't have the trust. That person doesn't have any sense of safe. There's no way I'm going to confront that person. There's no way I'm going to yell at that person, because that would utterly destroy them. And that's back to sports. When we saw the deterioration of the family and the basics where there was a solid place in the people, then we have to handle all of these things differently, because otherwise it will absolutely crush the child.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, women started going to work. There were more and more one parent households. There a lot of grandparents raising kids now. So yeah, as the culture shifted over the last 100 years, I think you're right. We've had to adapt to the lack of resilience and the lack of coping skills that kids have, because they don't have a foundation.
Mm-hmm. Well, and track PTSD. I mean, at one point, PTSD was entirely people who had been to war, and it was just, I mean, they had experienced traumatic things. Well, when you've experienced deep traumatic things, I don't care how good your foundation is. There's the kind of trauma that can shake that and cause them to be broken. Well, now you have, she looked at me, and now I have PTSD. I mean, it just, when the stuff on the inside is not nurtured, is not whole, is unbelievably fragile, you really have no choice but what to come alongside and bring correction in a much different manner, a much different zone. In the program, something else that I will tell you, I spend a lot of time walking through, giving detailed explanation. This is what we do. This is why we do. This is how we do. And I walk that through over and over again, exact same reasons. You're dealing with broken people. If they can't develop a sense of safe, belonging, trust, if those pieces can't be built, they can't receive the correction. So there might be some people out there who would watch this video and kind of almost recoil a little bit that when we're talking about this, because, if that's what you're going to do, it's going to be incredibly destructive. Well, the answer is, the way you do it, you don't start off with rebuke. You don't start off with harsh press in. You start off with building trust. You start off with loving them, sacrificing for them, a lot of those different pieces. And as that human being gets more solid, more stable, now I can up the ante. It's the opposite of what you would think. You would think, I'm going to come in, I'm going to bring the discipline on the front end, right? And then after I get you disciplined, then maybe we can relax and et cetera. And frankly, our approach, because of the broken people of this world, our approach is actually almost completely the opposite of that.
So you're talking about how to correct someone. What if I'm on the other end? How do I better receive correction?
Let's just start with the idea of believing that the other person means well. Now, they may not actually be executing it well, but I don't believe that there are many, I love this word, and I shouldn't use it because it's not used, but I love the word reprobate in Romans chapter 1 and some of the translations. A reprobate isn't just someone doing something stupid or mean or otherwise. They're someone who's deliberately hurting you, who deliberately, I don't believe there are many reprobates out there. There are people who have been hurt and they're angry, and out of their anger, they're not thinking about you, so they're going to lash out. But a reprobate wakes up in the morning and goes, who can I hurt?
Yeah.
Who can I destroy? Who am I? Most people wake up thinking, I don't want to be this grotesque sick person today. And then next thing you know, their pain and everything else takes over. And so they end up there and they end up on such a roll that they have no ability to control themselves. And at some point, after having no ability to control themselves, then it becomes a lifestyle to them. I actually believe that most people, when they're interacting with other people, unless there's bitterness, a grudge, envy, et cetera, that's clearly driving it, most people want to think well of themselves. So if you can actually step back and go, this person may not be trying to destroy me. Again, if there's direct bitterness, they might be. But may not be trying to destroy me. Maybe I ought to listen for the well-meaning part and see if there's any truth piece in it. That's a powerful way to change the way you hear things.
Mm-hmm. That's really hard to do.
Really?
Yeah, because it feels like people are shooting arrows directly into your chest.
I think you and I had a little bit of that for a while. I mean,
What?
when you first started working for me, let's just say there was occasionally a conflict that went on.
Well, I learned that I like conflict, so I'm going to go with yes.
Okay, there was a little bit of conflict, and in fact, you added your end of it, and so, and that's what happens a lot of times when there's conflict. You end up in the power struggles, you end up in the fights back and forth, and so you've got that. That's another entire dimension. But I guess where I go, I want to be the best version of me that I can be. I want to walk it out before Christ. I want to be able on Judgment Day. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And I'm listening. If you have something to say that can improve my walk, that can help me do that in a more effective way, bring it on. You know, I want to hear it. And if you can ever get to where you wrap your brain around that, and again, I've said it several times, but in my position, many times I get to the point to where the people around me who should be saying something to me, because they want to honor me, they want to respect me, they won't say what's going on, you know, in their brains. A lot of times the people that I have to hear it from are the people who hate my guts, who are mad at me, who are bitter, who are et cetera. So even though they're shooting arrows at me, I need to look behind the arrows and I need to listen and go, okay, is there something going on here? No, I don't need to hear the bitterness. I don't need to hear the condemnation. I don't need to hear that I'm a loser.
But is there truth in their statement?
It's possible to step back and filter that and really learn to listen. That's when you're living a lifestyle where you're going to grow. And if you have that view towards people, you don't see them as reprobates, you don't see them as fools, you see them as human beings responding in the image of God that just might have something powerful to say to you. You might have to filter. You might have to filter it, but that just changes everything in the way you look and the way you listen.
So we're running low on time, but I have one more question for you. So I'm thinking of like a work situation where you're in relationship with people just because they work there. What do you do when you're trying to give out correction, you know, to a coworker, and they're just there for the paycheck? They don't care. They don't want to improve. What do you do?
I would come back to the question that to me is the most powerful question: are you willing? And the answer is, if you're not willing, there's not a lot you can do. So if somebody doesn't want excellence, they don't want to grow, they're just there for the paycheck, to some extent, unless you have power to impact that situation, you pretty much the best thing you can do is just put up, shut up, accept it, and make the best of it.
Or just fire him.
Or fire him. Well,
that was my snark answer.
Yeah,
just fire him.
Well, that works. The other is go really be long on what I was talking about of do some explanation, walk through process, walk through understanding. Many people, if they feel understood, heard, then you come along in a way that you empower them. Sometimes people who weren't willing become willing. So your approach to that whole process can make a big difference.
So nagging is not the answer.
No. Nagging is, you're a loser and I'm tired of you being a loser and I wish you would get your act together. That's not empowering. That's not helpful. No, that is not the answer.
Just checking.
What about, can't you see what you're doing to everybody else and how it's affecting
Ooh.
Let's
them?
see.
Mm-hmm. You're making everybody miserable.
Can we start with tone? Let's see. Romans 8:1, there is therefore no condemnation. Yeah, I mean, as soon as you go into those kind of tones, you've got to come across as being for people. You need to come across believing what I said. I saw some eyes roll a little bit when I was saying I don't believe anyone's a reprobate. You know, I mean, there are people out there that are. Okay, I understand that.
There's a new Netflix series about Jeffrey Dahmer.
But yeah, there are people. There are people. Okay, they exist. But that belief system is big. If you actually believe that other person, given the right tools, given the time, can change, it changes your approach to them, and that's very powerful. That's very important.
I'm going to be open-minded. Thank you.
Well, you start being open-minded.
Well, you said we're
Not
out of
start.
time, but you know, one of the things. So I have a difficulty where there's this saying. I don't even want to spit it out because I'm so ashamed of it, to be honest with you, because I know what he's going to say. So I'm just going to look at you while I'm talking.
You're just going to
which is that I don't want to take advice from somebody. I don't want to take criticism from somebody I wouldn't take advice from. So if I have no respect for you, then I am not likely to hear what you have to say to me about what I need to do differently.
So now tell me what I was going to say.
Oh, you would tell me something about how everybody has the ability, the Holy Spirit can speak through everybody.
About a broken clock is right twice.
I like
that. To be open-minded, that a first grader can teach a third grader, and yada, 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 yada.
I will encourage you with this so that I'm supporting you and not confronting you. You need to have an inner circle. And you don't put people who are critical, caustic, negative in your inner circle. I mean, sometimes you almost have to in a work setting. You have to put up with certain kinds of things. But no, you don't want that in your inner circle. You do want to have people who are going to bring life. But yes, everybody out there has potential to be used by God in a positive way. And changing your picture with that makes a huge difference. Well, I think we need to wrap it up today. I guess I'll take Ashley's job since she's looking at me. But wrap it up today. I do hope that you'll take a look at the video. I think you'll find that it'll be powerful. It'll bring impact. But not only that, consider using it in some kind of a teaching setting. That also will have powerful application. Really believe that many of our videos are excellent that way. They can be shared as an individual or can be done as a group experience, and we encourage you to jump in, like, subscribe, connect with us next week, and thank you for joining us.